So for once you're having a trouble, Kavya. Normally I have the trouble trying to I get all confused and do all stupid things. Hmm?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Manisha. Manisha. It says twice, so I'm going by that. Hmm? That's called positive reinforcement. Okay, making sure that I don't forget you. No, I won't forget you. I am like an elephant. I have a pretty decent memory. Elephants are known for their memory. So I have a good memory, so I won't forget. Not so easy. Mm. Kavya, you're still inaudible, but I don't know. Good afternoon, Lakshmi Are Kanti Garu.
Good afternoon, sir.
Lakshmi Are Kanti Lakshmi. So she is also two Lakshmis and one Are Kanti. Mhm. Manisha is just Manisha. Manisha, she's Lakshmi Are Kanti Lakshmi. So there's a sandwich here. Hmm?
Sir, now it is okay, sir.
Yeah, it is
Ah.
okay, ma'am. So shall we get going?
Yes, sir.
Hmm? We go by 2 is company, 3 is a crowd. So I believe that we have a crowd. So let's start off. Okay, then. Right. I had more or less finished discussing the qualities of the Janapadas. Kavya, I think you need to mute your this thing because yeah, I was getting a lot of some sound. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I was talking to you about Janapadas. I had finished. One particular point that we also need to note about the ancient Janapadas is that the Janapadas in their administration, we've talked about various dimensions of it. I've talked about chieftains and advisors to the chieftains and all that. But we did not talk about an army. Okay, today when we talk about states, uh, nation states, when we talk about them, we talk about them having armies also as an integral part of it. Not just today, if you go back even into ancient India, uh, the Mauryan Empire was having armies, and the Mauryan Empire was actually facing threats from Alexander. Uh, Alexander was supposed to have reached somewhere near uh, the Khurasan area. He had crossed that into present day Afghanistan, and the Mauryan Empire it went there, that side, and so they did have an army. Okay, but by that time, Janapadas had ceased to exist. They had become Rajyas. Okay, you had the Nanda dynasty ruling first, and then the Mauryan dynasty took over and expanded the Nanda empire. But if you look at the Janapadas, very funnily, I've searched through the literature. I have not found reference to armies or to conflicts between Janapadas. Okay, so that is an interesting feature. If you do find somewhere, if people say that Janapadas also had armies and that they had conflicts amongst themselves, let me know of it, because in all the literature that I have searched, reliable literature that is, there's a lot of unreliable literature available. Okay, and for example, look at this slide, state and government in ancient India. There's no state. Okay, there is no state in ancient India. There's no state in ancient Europe also. Okay, ancient Indian political thought and institutions is a slightly better title. And if you look at uh, the book by uh, Arthur Llewellyn Basham, uh, he doesn't use any of these uh, what should I say, terms, state or government. He just talks about that as the wonder that was India. And even R.C. Majumdar just calls it ancient India. No, there's no political or this thing there. So some of these, or D.N. Cha's book also, if you look at it, it's ancient India. It is, I think I have typed it wrong. It should be a historical outline. Okay, that is the title, not in historical outline. That's where there's a bit of an error. So, but despite the fact that Altaker has very badly titled his work remains important because he does throw light upon several aspects of what happened in ancient India. B.A. Salator is better because when he's talking about institutions, he's doing slightly better this thing of better analysis. Somebody needs to mute their mic. Somebody needs to mute their mic, please. Not you, Kavya. I can hear a male voice. Okay, right. So there isn't a mention of armies as such. There is, however, mention of internal security. Okay, there is a mention of internal security, and it didn't have a very big this thing. What should I say? It didn't have a very big force of people like we have the police today, which is, in spite of being such a huge force, uh, it is still not adequate to take care of the problems that a city like Hyderabad faces. And I don't know if you know this, Hyderabad is already in the list of the top 10 surveilled cities of the world. Okay, Hyderabad in India is the most surveilled, which means there are maximum number of cameras in public places where people are being surveilled. And over and above that, I read an article about 4 days back, I think, saying that KT Ramarao is asking for more number of cameras to more number of cameras to be, uh, you know, um, put in different locations. So we might go right to the top of the surveilled cities. Okay, so basically to control crime, we apparently need a big police force. We need to surveil our citizens. We're a democracy. I can understand this happening in China. Okay, out of the 10 cities, 7 of them are Chinese, by the way. No, 6 of them are Chinese, 7 is Hyderabad, and the rest are US. Okay, so US is also a democracy, but they also, though they claim they're a democracy, I always claim that they are an oligarchy. 578 people electing a president is not democracy. Okay, so anyway, so we require more and more police forces. We require armies. And yesterday's paper, I think, or day before yesterday, says that there is an amassing of troops by China at the border. 60,000 new troops have been added. So India is also responding. We have one of the biggest infantries. Infantry is the army, which is, soldiers who are foot soldiers, right? And these are the people who are guarding the borders. So we are also upping our presence there. And so what you see is this tendency. You basically see this tendency to, what is it? 1 second, I'm sorry. Yeah, we see more and more of a tendency to rely upon coercive apparatus. Okay, a coercive apparatus, which the police for internal security and the armed forces for external security, all these symbolize. But if you look at the Janapadas, there doesn't seem to be any big police kind of a force. There is a security force. Numbers are not mentioned. Uh, then the army is not mentioned, which would tell you that people were living in a relatively peaceful situation. Okay, it basically means that people were living in a peaceful situation. The Janapadas were not conflicting with each other, neither were they at that point of time or point in time, they were not even facing threats like Alexander or the later on the Islamic invasions. They weren't facing those kind of threats at that particular time. So it seems to be a relatively peaceful era. Uh, I thought that is a point that one should make. It is significant for one reason, and that reason is when we talk about the Ganapada, we need to know this thing about, not really having security forces in a big way. Now you read Salator. Salator says Ganapadas and Janapadas are almost the same. And he says that there are two different terms employed to describe the same thing. But new research seems to show that there is a difference between a Janapada and a Ganapada. Now, one of the differences somehow falls back into the category of mythologies. Okay. And the other one falls into the category of itihasas. So if you go by Ganapada, okay, the word Gana, okay, Gana was used in order to show those people who owed their allegiance to Shiva. Okay, so Shiva and his Ganas is what people talk about, right? And when we celebrate Ganesh Chaturthi, Ganapati Bappa Moria, Ganapati is the head of the Ganas. Okay, so there is the story that tells you how Ganesh became Ganapati, how he, in fact, even Ganesh is the leader of this thing only. His name is supposed to be Vignapati, actually. Ganapati is a later on name. Okay. So these Ganas, according to some, are simply followers of Shiva. Okay, they are simply followers of Shiva. And like I told you, when people say the abode of Shiva is Kailas Mansarovar, Mount Kailash and Mansarovar are in present day Tibet. Okay, and there are, and please don't read uh, what Tripathi, Amish Tripathi's trilogy uh, on Shiva, the Immortals of Meluha, and please don't read those. Uh, I mean, you can read them, but please don't see them as reflecting, uh, reflecting what was actually happening at that time. For example, he refers to Amrit as Somras. Okay, that is very wrong. Somras is an intoxicant. Okay, it's not a divine thing, whereas Amrit or Amritam in Sanskrit, it is something that gives you immortality. It is not the somaras that gives you immortality. Somaras only puts you to sleep. In fact, if you look at writings about Shushruta, supposedly the first surgeon in the world, okay, if you look at him, he's supposed to have used the somaras to knock people unconscious so that he could perform surgeries on them. Okay, so the argument therefore is Somras and Amrit are two different things. They cannot be used interchangeably. So that's why I said, when these things get into the realm of pulp fiction, it is okay if that Chetan Bhagat writes nonsense about IIT days and that kind of pulp. That is acceptable. I find him very readable. What I only object to is when people call him to comment on political events and all. He has no qualification whatsoever to talk about political events. I read his pulp fiction and it is enjoyable. If you want to have, it's like watching a meaningless film. Okay, when you don't really want to load your brain with thought, you just want to do something meaningless. That is when you can read Chetan Bhagat. He's good for that, not anything more than that. But what Amish Tripathi is doing also falls in that particular category, but he's taking liberties with history. He's taking liberty with, concepts and all that kind of thing. Now, if you look at the Ganapada, so the mythological interpretation is that it was Shiva's Ganas and that these people were ruled by Shiva and they owed their allegiance to Shiva. Yet another uh, interpretation uh, by somebody like Ajay Kansal, okay, Ajay, Ajay, Kansal, Kansal. Ajay Kansal argues that Shiva, all the people whom we today deify and worship, were at one time just ordinary mortals who, with their feats of bravery and all, uh, became godlike in their reputation. Okay, and it is that reputation that we cling to. That is what he argues. That is also, in my view, not a great argument. There isn't enough justification. But some people argue that the Ganas had been led by Shiva from Kailash Mansarovar down to down the Himalayas into the plains of India. Okay, and Shiva is seen as a bit of a conqueror. He's seen as a bit of a conqueror in the sense that they didn't really fight wars, but the fact that he had these ganas with him, and these ganas were armed, apparently, and since they were armed, it essentially meant that they were warlike. But there is no documentation of a single uh, sorry there isn't a documentation of a single warlike event having taken place between Shiva's Ganas and other people's armies. Okay, so Ganapada Ganas are also, maybe as Salator says, it could be Ganas are followers of leaders. That is his interpretation. Okay, what is that? What is a Gana? A Gana is a set of followers of a leaders. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are aggressive. Doesn't also mean that they are warlike. or that they fought or would fight wars. But some people say there are some evidences of Ganapadas or Shiva's Ganas threatening existing Janapadas. And because the Janapadas really did not have uh, any kind of an army or whatever, they just accepted Shiva's authority. And that is why they became Ganapadas. This is one interpretation, which is again something which cannot be either proved or disproved. Jha's interpretation of this is that Ganapada was applied by Shiva worshippers. This is again a mythological explanation. Those people who were followers of Shiva, these people called themselves Ganas. And therefore, it is the Ganapada that existed. And they say probably Ganapadas, or rather he says, Jha says, Ganapadas predate Janapadas, because one of the arguments that you find is that Shaivism is older than Aryan culture. Okay, people say that Shaivism is older than Aryan culture, as is Naga worship. Okay, and the Aryans are accused of gerrymandering. Okay, Gerrymandering. Gerrymandering. Now there is the source of this word is very interesting. It came out of America. It's a very American term. There's somewhere on the East Coast, there is an island which is shaped like a salamander. A salamander, I don't know if you've seen one, it's a huge lizard. Okay, it's shaped like a salamander. And this particular island was ruled by a governor whose name was Jerry something. I don't remember his second name. And he was known to be very, very cunning. What he used to do was, if somebody opposed him, he co-opted them into his own ranks. Okay, he co-opted them into his own ranks and snuffed out the opposition. Okay, so that process came to be called gerrymandering. By co-opting somebody into something, then you say it is, you are no longer my enemy, you are like me, right? So people say that the Aryans had gerrymandered, though the word came much later. We are describing a phenomenon of ancient India. And there, this thing is that this Trimurti, that is there, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, was a later on addition. And the Vishnu Purana does not make any kind of references to anything which is Shaivite or anything other than the Brahman and not Brahma. So if you look at that, then you are basically looking at a process of gerrymandering, and the Nagas, uh, when they opposed the Aryans incorporated them also into uh, the fold of Sanatana Dharma by making the Naga, I mean the cobra, the Nag is the cobra, they made it a divine Yagnopavita. Yagnopavita is that sacred thread. Okay, the sacred thread. They said it is divine Yagnopavita that is worn by gods. So you'll see even Ganapati has a snake not worn like a sacred thread, but you see it is around his huge stomach. Uh, and Shiva has a snake on his neck. So this is all considered to be a part of gerrymandering, where you incorporate an existing culture into your own thing and you say we are not different. Okay, so the early growth of the Aryan civilization is seen as using gerrymandering to grow. And in this usage of gerrymandering, the word Ganapada gained currency. The term, not word, sorry, it gained currency because Shiva's followers were told doesn't matter whether it is Janapada or Ganapada, it is the same thing. Okay, though the object of Aryan worship is Vishnu. That's why there's a Vishnu Purana, which is there as a work of the Aryans, but they created this triumvirate, gave the thing of destroyer of the world to Shiva. They gave him that status and incorporated him into it. So that's how it grew. And that is the reason why there are so many different tales and subtales within this whole thing that people call uh, Hinduism. See, Hinduism is not a religion, okay? And it is also not a unified philosophy. For example, if you look at Buddhism, Buddhism is a unified philosophy. Clearly, the teachings of the Buddha are the philosophy. Okay, if you take Jainism, it is the teachings of the Tirthankaras, starting with Parsvanatha and including Mahavira. They are a unified body of knowledge. But that which came to be called Hinduism in the 19th century, Raja Ram Mohan Roy is supposed to have coined this phrase, Hinduism. It's not an ism at all. In fact, there is a very interesting word to describe Hinduism. It is called a synecdoche. Okay, Synecdoche. Okay, you will tend to pronounce that as synecdoche or synecdoche, but the actual pronunciation is synecdoche. What is a synecdoche? A synecdoche is taking a part and confusing it for the whole. That is what synecdoche is. Okay, taking a part of something and confusing it to be the whole. So if you look at the varieties of Hinduism that are practiced, the different pantheons of gods that are there, villages have Ammavaru, okay? The upper castes have more of a patriarchal this thing, though they are not entirely patriarchal originally, but they have more male deities. But among the lower rungs of the caste, you find there is greater this thing of the female divine. So Ganapada happened as a gerrymandering, and because of this unfortunate thing that Raja Ram Mohan Roy did, he was a great man in different ways, but he called it a Hinduism as if it was one unified body of knowledge or philosophy. It is not. There are several strands, each of which could be independent of others. Okay, somebody identified 800 different strands that are confused as one strand, which is Hinduism. Okay, and Hindutva is complete nonsense. It's complete nonsense. So the Ganapada may have been a gerrymandering exercise to incorporate Shaivism, which predated which predated the uh, Aryan invasion or the Aryan civilization. Let's not call it invasion, because if you say invasion, there are now people, Modi bhakts especially, who will say no, Aryans are from India only. So let us say that this is pre-Aryan, whether they are from India or they came from outside, we'll not get into that. And the Aryans incorporated this into their own culture. So the growth of what came to be called Hinduism, or the growth of the Sanatana Dharma traditions, I'm calling them traditions because there's no one tradition. There are number of traditions in the Sanatana Dharma itself, even if you don't call it Hindu. The Sanatana Dharma traditions have all been synecdoches, okay, and they are, people are happy practicing them, and that's why we have polytheism, so many gods, right? So the Ganapada should be understood in that particular context. So it is quite possible that the Janapada and the Ganapada do not mean two different things. They ultimately mean the same thing. But at a time when Shaivism was getting incorporated into this ever expanding Sanatana Dharma traditions, that became Ganapadas, as did Naga worship. Okay, people worship the cobra, the Nag, and people have Nag Panchami on which they pour milk. Snakes don't drink milk, by the way. So, no, seriously, they don't. So that is again a mythology, but it is an integral part of this Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma. So the Ganapada need not be treated as being separate from the Janapada. Okay, it is a process of gerrymandering that resulted in this word also gaining currency.